Assembly District 10. Judge Kenneth Pollock, I'm your moderator today. Our rules for today are as follows. We're following a strict time schedule. There will be a timekeeper, and when you hear a tone, your time has ended. I'm here to cut you off if you ignore the tone. This is an interview, not a debate, and there'll be no redirected questions. Candidates are allowed 1.5 minutes for their introduction. Panelists will be given 30 seconds to pose a question. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond. If time allows, audience members will be invited to pose a question, and/or the panel will be asked for additional questions. This is not a forum to air personal grievances. Complex questions that require too lengthy an answer may be disqualified. Panelists will pose their questions to one candidate or to all candidates only if a yes or no answer can be given. We'll begin with introduction by Mr. Friedrich.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I have one request. I'm hard of hearing. I refuse to use a hearing aid, so please speak up. I'm an 11-year resident of Las Vegas. I own my own home here. I have 2 opponents on the Democratic primary. I'm a former general contractor and a non-attorney arbitrator with the American Arbitration Association. I have taught construction management at CSN. I'm currently a commissioner, Democratic commissioner appointed by a Republican governor to try to clean up some of the corruption and the mess that's going on in the common interest community, otherwise known as HOAs. Last fall, I discovered that the commission had illegally adopted advisory opinions that are costing each and every one of us in this room millions and millions of dollars, and you don't even know it. I tried to get that advisory opinion rescinded last December. It wasn't going to make it. The commissioners, other commissioners didn't want to vote for it. It was submitted to the Attorney General's office. A decision came down in the middle of February that said it was done illegally. On February 27th, there was a vote by 6 of the 7 commissioners, and the motion failed on a tie vote. The following day, the governor's office and/or the Attorney General's office terminated 3 of the commissioners that voted against repealing that advisory opinion. It was illegal. When I was appointed, I took an oath to support the laws of this state.
That's time. Thank you. Ms. Shelton.
Hi, my name is Shelly Shelton. I'm a small business owner. I'm a mom. I'm a housewife, and I'm a Nevadan. And part of the reason that I got into this race is it all started with Colossians 1:9 and not doing enough as myself as an individual, and seeing the direction that Nevada is headed, and I've decided to help change that direction. But I know that it's not a one-man job or a one-lady job. It's going to take an effort of like-minded people coming together in order to stand up for our freedoms and our liberties. Excuse me. And unfortunately, this is something that we have to keep repeating throughout history. From the Minutemen in Concord to the legislators right now fighting against Common Core and to uphold our Second Amendment rights. We as Americans need to stand up and fight for our freedom, and we need to fight for our liberty. And that's the main reason that I decided to run for this office, to help do my part, or start to do my part, and be a more responsible citizen.
Thank you. Our first question comes from Mr. Blanchard.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you both for coming out to this process. It's rather important and daunting at times. So let me just start with this. This November, upcoming November, there'll be a question number 3, which is called the Education Initiative, better known as the margin tax. I'd like to ask both of you if you're for it, against it, and if you are against it, or if it were to fail, and you were elected, would you be sponsoring a bill, or would you vote for a bill that would put a tax, say, sales tax on services, or some other kind of tax to make up for the supposed funds that they need in the state of Nevada?
Ms. Ms. Shelton, you're first.
Okay. First of all, I'm against the margin tax or the educational tax, whichever you want to call it. It baffles me how the titles of things keep changing. I don't know if it's to confuse people or what, but as I'm talking to people, they have no idea about this, which is kind of scary to me. I'm a small business owner, and the whole principle of taxing somebody on their gross and not their net is just incomprehensible to me. And I forgot the second part of your question.
Would you sponsor or?
Oh, more
push for it?
taxes.
Yeah.
No taxes. In fact, I signed a tax pledge earlier this week that taxes are not the answer to our problem. And as far as finding funding for the education, I think there is money in the educational system. We don't need to be taxing anymore. We need to look at the funding that we already have, just like you do with your own personal business. When you are trying to make your business work and you're having struggles or an extra load that you have to pay for, you go back and you look to see where can I cut, what can I do differently, and the school board or the educational board needs to do the same thing.
Friedrich.
Thank you. It's a very confusing tax. I've heard all kinds of variations of it. The legislature had the responsibility to say yes or no. What they did was they shirked their responsibility and they're going to let the voters decide. Obviously, they need more money in the school system. That's a whole other answer that would take more than a minute and a half. What I would propose is a luxury tax. Any item, for instance, an airplane, an expensive car, a boat, furs, jewelry, anything over, say, $50,000 to increase the sales tax. Another issue is to increase the price of the tax on tobacco products and let that money go towards health and mental care. I was a small business owner. I ran my own construction company. I started with $16,000 of personal savings. I retired, I did very well, and I didn't want to have to pay the government for all my hard work. Again, I believe there should be a luxury tax. Those who can afford an expensive item can pay a higher tax.
Next question comes from Ms. Knight.
Okay, so I'm actually in your guys' district, so I will be voting.
Speak up.
I'm sorry. Okay, so my question, which I'm going to reword it so I can get you guys both the answer, is do you think we have a right as Nevadans to the BLM land? If so, what would you do as my assembly person to gain that right, that land back?
Mr. Friedrich, it's your turn to go first.
I didn't quite hear the first part. I know you wanted to know how can we get that land back?
Plus, do you think that we deserve the BLM land as Nevadans? And if so, what would you do as an assembly person to make that happen?
I don't know the exact procedure, but I know there's about 85 or 90% of the land in this state belongs to the feds. I would petition and probably have to come out of Congress to get some of that land back. What I would like to do is see a lot of this land that's just sitting there become developed to bring in industry. Large companies like John Deere, Caterpillar, so that they could buy the land at a discounted price or a low price, or even be given the land to create manufacturing, which would then create jobs, which would help the economy. Now, I hear the word free range. The dispute that's going on now was yesterday somewhat curtailed. Was that land posted? Was it fenced? Now, the other issue is the tortoises. Well, why can't they be rounded up and put into a protective area? I mean, that would resolve that. But let's use some common sense here. I don't have all the facts, but I understand that the judge who made a ruling was from state court. Now, if this was a federal issue, how did it wind up in state court?
Shelton.
With the, as far as the BLM land, I am totally, I think where your question is coming from is what has been happening with the Clive and Bundy family. And I totally support them. I was up there earlier this week trying to help them. I think this is Nevada, and this is our land, and I understand that from the very beginning of our, when we became a state, that was one of the clauses that they put in there, that we get your land and we'll let you become a state. But we need to stand up as a state and let the federal government know that this is our land, this is what we're going to do, what we find feasible, our citizens find feasible to do with this land, and we don't need the federal government coming in and taking over and basically running our ranchers out of this state, nor do we need them making up false accusations like it's going to be, let's see if I say if this is going to be a turtle issue, if I'm going to get more sympathy, or if I say that this is a water issue, am I going to get more sympathy? We need to stand up as citizens and protect our rights and our liberties and have the federal government.
Your time has expired. Our next question comes from Mr. Fox.
Thank you. I'm going to direct this to
Johnathan.
I see that you work a lot with, obviously, the homeowners associations, but also with
Actually against them.
against them, but also with homelessness. I saw on your site, and I just want to mention that veterans, especially disabled veterans, aren't usually thought of as an at-risk population, but we face higher unemployment rates, more health issues, higher risk of suicide, and homelessness, especially being on fixed income. So with a large population of veterans in southern Nevada, more than 250,000 in Nevada, the majority of them here in Clark County, with your work in homelessness, what would your plans be to help the homeless veteran population and reduce it? Because it's nearly a quarter of the homelessness here is veterans.
I have volunteered several times for Project Connect. I don't know how many are familiar with it, but it's one day at Cashman Center where a group of charity organizations and Clark County get together and they bring in, I think this past year was over 2,000 people, everything from haircuts to clothing to giveaways, food, lunch. What I'd like to see, and this would benefit both the construction trades and the homeless. I don't know how many of you have ever seen these extended stay hotels where it's one room, a little tiny kitchenette, and a bathroom. Those being manufactured, prefabricated, set up. We've got plenty of land in North Las Vegas and other areas in Clark County where these homeless can be given decent homes and given social help, training. So that's a major issue. Drive around on Washington Avenue, under the underpass, at about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, and you'll see all the homeless camped out there. It's a disgrace. And you have hotels like the Bellagio and the Venetian. That's a third world country out there.
Our next question comes from Mr. Atkins.
Ms. Shelton, when you did your introduction, you made reference to Common Core, correct?
I probably did.
Is that something you support or not?
I'm against Common Core.
Okay, so I don't understand what Common Core, I looked it up, and it says it's to establish consistent education standards across the states, right? So that the kids are prepared to go into 2-year college, 4-year college. If you don't support Common Core, I want to understand why not, and what would be your plan to make sure our children graduate with skill sets to go into college?
Sure. On the surface, Common Core sounds excellent, and I'm all for what it is on the surface. They want to make it so that our students are able to compete globally or throughout the United States to get better jobs. That's great. I'm for that. They also want to, like, let's say Johnny lives here in Nevada. We have a lot of veterans and the Air Force Base here. Well, if their family gets transferred, say, to North Carolina, Johnny is not going to be behind or ahead. He's going to be with it. So he's not going to be falling behind or getting ahead and getting bored. So all that on the surface sounds great, doesn't it? What you need to do is look farther into it. And first of all, I'm always a little skeptical when money's being offered for something. And the National Governors Association had a meeting, and 45 states decided to adapt to the Common Core. We, as Nevada, I think we took $10 million for this. Now, what that does is that takes less power from our state, less power from our teachers to be able to use a curriculum or to teach their children. The more we have the government step in and take control, the less control we have. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm against Common Core. Not to mention the data mining, because I don't want my child's information following her for the rest of her life. If she threw a tantrum when she was in 3rd grade and that gets put into their database and she's out on a job site trying to get a job, and they're like looking at, well, you were pretty naughty when you were in 3rd grade. I don't want that information to be held against her in the future. So I think on the surface, Common Core sounds excellent, I'm all for it, but when you get to look at what it really is, it's not good for our country, and it is not good for our freedom, and it's not good for our liberty.
Next question from Mr. Giraldi.
Yes, this will be to both of you. I heard one of you mentioned that you would support that you would support development of BM land. This was touched on a little bit. There's been an investigative report that's been released 20 hours ago on worldnetdaily.com. On April 3rd, 2012, Bloomberg reported that the Chinese billionaire ENN Group, which is a solar company and energy company in China, has struck a incentive on the land deal with Senator Henry Reid on some of the BM land that the ranchers are on. Would you support that development?
Sounds like a conflict of interest to me.
Hold on, sir.
He was looking straight at me.
We'll start with Ms. Shelton.
Sorry. Did that answer your question?
Well, I think there's a lot behind this scene with the Clyde and Bundy Ranch that I don't think any of us in this room are aware of. I think it goes much deeper, and it's going to affect each and every one of us as far as in the future with our freedom and with our liberty. Unfortunately, I don't think this is over with the Bundy family. I think there's going to be more to come for them, which is unfortunate. I think all of us as citizens of Clark County need to stand behind them. As far as the BLM land, I think that here in Nevada, whether you want the BLM land for recreational purposes or you want to build something on the land is the people. We are the people. And if you want to, I think we should be able to either use the land recreationally or use the land to build a house on it or use the land to build a business on it. But I don't think we need to do that at the expense of another citizen. We need to remember that we're not only looking at our own freedom and our own liberty, but the freedom and the liberty of our neighbor.
Mr. Friedrich, it's your turn.
I think it said it all. Conflict of interest. He should not be involved. If it's a company from another country, there should be what's done in Mexico, where there is participation by somebody in our state and the foreign national.
Next questions from Mr. Wagner.
In your guys' campaigns, do you both take money from all lobbyist PACs and special interest groups? And if this is just a yes or no question, do you take money from lobbyists, PACs, PACs and special interest groups?
No.
I've just started, so the answer to that question for me is no, and I've never been approached or put into that situation. I don't see myself doing that in the future, because I think personally that there would be some tie, there would be some, well, let me give you this if you do this to me, and I'm not that kind of person.
Thank you. I'd like to just follow up on that.
Well, actually,
Envy
we have
Energy
no-
hates me.
Mr. Friedrich,
So-
I'm
was a
sorry.
yes and no
Hold on,
question.
sir. I'm sorry, there are no follow-ups.
Okay.
Mr. Engel.
Ms. Shelton, Nevada has sunlight going on about 300 days a year, but there's really not a lot of money being put into solar home use for personal residents. They're not encouraged to do that. Do you support an initiative to be able to encourage people to buy solar panels that would be able to help lower our cost energy?
And who was that question directed to?
Shelly.
I think that I think NV Energy does have a solar solar panel plan. I don't know if it's to the extent of what you're talking about. I would support any private business giving a discount to a homeowner to put in solar panels. However, I would not support the government giving funding for you to put solar panels on your home.
Our next question comes from Mr. Broadway.
I'm going to ask you some questions. You're either for or against. Mrs. Shelton, I'll ask you first. Campus carry with authorized permits, for or against?
Campus carry,
Ma'am, for or against?
I'm for campus carry.
Thank you. Mr. Friedrich?
Against.
Ms. Shelton, term limits, for or against?
I'm for term limits.
Mr. Friedrich?
Absolutely.
Driver's license for non-immigrants?
Against.
Mr. Friedrich?
Not a license, but make sure that they can have insurance.
For or against?
A driver's license, against, but a card, yes. They're two different issues.
Okay. Education for kids, their parents are undocumented immigrants / illegals?
Against.
The likelihood that these people, the children, are going to
Sir,
stay
for or
here-
against?
I can't answer that question the way it's posed.
State lottery, Ms. Shelton, for or against?
I'd be for the state.
Mr.
For.
Friedrich? Thank you.
Our next question comes from Ms. Mosley.
This question is for both of you. When we think of veterans, we tend to think of men, but approximately 22,000 women in the state of Nevada are veterans. With some of the issues that are facing veterans, like homelessness, joblessness, these women often have children. As a legislator, would you be willing to introduce specific legislation that will help these female veterans?
Is that for both?
For both.
Okay, so this one, Mr. Friedrich, you're first.
Yes, and I've seen this firsthand at Project Connect, where a lot of women came in, and families, and women with children. And it brought tears to my eyes to see these people.
Ms. Shelton.
I think we as citizens need to stand behind our men and women. Not just our men, but as you say, our women too. I think it's a shame that we send our men and women to a different country to fight for our freedom and for our liberty, and they come back here to our country, and we cannot meet their needs that they have both physically, mentally, socially, and the pay that we give these men, we should be ashamed of ourselves, and we should look at the pays that I know that our firemen and our police put their lives out on the line too, but so do these men. And if you look at the pays that the veterans get compared to the pay that the police or the fire department get, there's a wide range of difference there, and we need to take a look at that. And maybe we could use a little bit of that money to help with the women and the children of the vets that are here in Las Vegas.
Our next question comes from Mr. Kelly.
Nevada ranks 49th in education and last in money spent per student. Do you think there's a problem with the school budgets, or do you think they're spending the money irresponsibly?
Who is that directed to?
Both.
Ms. Shelton, you're first.
With the budget, I think that it's kind of suspicious to me that the budget has been going up and our children's knowledge and education has been going down. So that's a red flag for me right there. I think that we need to, there's definitely overspending taking place, and we just need to take a look at, with a fine-tooth comb, just like I said in the beginning, because when you run a business and you can't afford to do something, you find another way to do it, and you cut where you need to cut. And I think if we take a look at the budget, and I also think it's very important that in the school classrooms that we do allow our teachers the ability to teach in their classrooms. And each individual student's different for them. Each individual class is going to be different. So they need to have the power to adapt to each class. I homeschool my daughter, and I see the differences and the changes in just teaching her. At the beginning of the school year, I can teach her one way, and at the end of the school year, we might be doing it a totally different way or have a totally different curriculum. We need to be able to give those teachers the power to be able to do what they need to do in their classrooms.
Mr. Friedrich.
Clark County School District spent $103 million on consultants. Do you realize how many textbooks and salaries that could buy? Stop hiring all these high-priced consultants. I taught at CSN, which is community college, but I saw how top-heavy the administration was at CSN, and what I've been told in the Clark County School District, it's just as bad, if not worse. Put the money into the classroom. A friend of mine's wife is a substitute teacher. She doesn't have enough textbooks for the students. So the money has got to be reassigned to where you get the biggest buck for the dollar.
Next question is from Mr. Jonas.
Okay, so this question is specifically for Ms. Shelton. What do you think, or whose responsibility is it to decide what's a luxury tax and what isn't a luxury tax? If I work hard and I make a good income, shouldn't I be able to buy whatever it is I want without scared, no, I can't buy that because they're just going to tax me too much?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm behind any tax, whether it's the margin tax, the luxury tax, whatever you want to call the tax. Like I said in the beginning, taxes aren't the issue. I'm beginning to think taxes are the problem.
Our next question is from Mr. Hughes.
I'm the gun guy. Well, I gotta lift it up. This one is from Mr. Friedrich. I noticed in your bio that you gave us here, you were against the smart meters, which I was against, which I like.
And by the way, I spent hours sitting there arguing against it.
I'm sure a lot of us did. You also came out earlier and you said the Assembly and the Senate were shirking responsibilities onto others. And I noticed that you said that you were against campus carry. The Nevada revised statute says that campus carry should be the regent's decision in making all the rules. Are you saying as a state senator that you would take that revision out and make it a legislative decision? Or are you for keeping it for the regents?
Well, first of all, it's not the Senate seat that I'm running for, it's Assembly.
Well, that's what I'm sorry. A legislative. What I'm asking is because you're in the
Legislative
Assembly,
decision.
right? Is it going to be? Are you for making it a legislative decision or
Yes.
keeping it at the regents level?
On the campus carry,
Yes.
That's a difficult question to answer because I don't know who the regents are. And I just think it is an invitation for a disaster. Let's say you have the training, you have a concealed permit, but you're not that great of a shot. And you shoot the person next to you by mistake.
And you go to jail.
But he shot, he may be dead.
Next question from Ms. Steele.
What if he did it on purpose?
You gotta prove it first.
Still goes to jail.
I want to thank you both for coming here today, and I'm going to assume by your answers that you're both already familiar with Common Core, Agenda 21, and ICLEI. Yes?
All but the last.
Okay. And since we've already heard a little bit about Common Core, I'd like Mr. Friedrich, if you could tell us a little bit about Agenda 21, and Ms. Shelton to tell us a little bit about ICLEI. Start with Mr. Friedrich.
In the very plain, idea, it is, the way I see it, bring down the level of people on this planet. It's scary. The smart meters are radiating us. They're intrusive. They cause fires. And I spent hours and hours at the PUC listening to NV Energy's lies about the fact that they have no harmful effects on people. But this is a UN, shall I say, proposal that deals with just about everything dealing with humanity.
Thank you.
I apologize. I do know about Agenda 21 and Common Core, but I don't know about the ICLEI.
Okay.
And I heard you ask that before, so I had wrote that down to so I can research to see what that's about. But
Okay,
if you want to
give us
educate
your
me.
take on Agenda 21?
Use the mic. Can you give us your take on Agenda 21?
I am against Agenda 21. Again, I think we need to have less federal, whether it's from the UN or whether it's from the federal government. They don't need to be involved in our day-to-day, everyday lives. There are certain guidelines that should be where the government should be. And then we as citizens, we don't need to be babysat by the federal government. We're all adults. Yes, we do make mistakes, but we learn from those mistakes and we move forward. And that's the great thing about living here in America, is that we're able to do that. I think Agenda 21 is against our liberties, it's against our freedom, and I'm against Agenda 21.
Do we have a few minutes?
We have a few minutes left.
Because what I'm getting at is, I'm not getting into... I'm specifically asking if you can tell us, for those who don't know, about what Agenda 21 is. I asked a lot of candidates and a lot of seated representatives, and probably 2 out of 100 have even heard of it. So for those who don't know, could you please tell us what Agenda 21 is? Sure. We know it's bad, but what is it?
Right. I still am studying more about Agenda 21. What I, and I can't think of, usually I like to tell the good and the bad, but as far as with Agenda 21, that we are giving the UN, which is the United Nations, the power to come into our state and regulate via the smart meter that Mr. Friedrich is speaking of, and getting information about our citizens. And that's the extent of my knowledge at this
Do you
point.
have anything you can add to that?
From what I've heard, it's a disguised way of reducing the world's population.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hughes, follow-up question?
Yes, I have a follow-up question. Now let's flip the campus carry around. We had a female at one of them get raped on the campus. She had a concealed carry license. She was right in front of the security office that's on the campus, and she was raped. I shoot some guy next to me, yeah, but what about the women on the campus? How are they supposed to take care of their own safety?
Who's that directed to?
To Mr. Friedrich.
I was very much alerted to that. I was up in Carson City when Michelle Fiore brought that bill forward. She had the girl there, or the woman there. And what it really comes down to, I think, is where was the campus security. I understand it was in a garage at night. It wasn't well lit. So it was a recipe for disaster. And even if this woman, now you're saying this woman had a concealed weapon.
No, she did
Oh, she did not.
She had her license, though, to carry a concealed weapon in the state of Nevada.
But she's not allowed to use it. Now, Michelle Fiore went to a meeting there, and she asked to carry her own weapon, and they refused to let her. This is an assemblywoman. And they escorted her with campus police. So it's still a recipe for disaster. And if you want to, quote, try it out, it could get very bloody.
Do we have any further questions from our panelists? Okay, at this time, I'll open it to the audience. Please state your name and your question.
Hello, I'm Stuart Tenner, and I'm actually running for Assembly District in District 5. And my question is to you, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, Mr. Friedrich?
I'll answer to anything.
Wonderful. During the Clinton administration, there was a luxury tax placed on yachts. It utterly murdered the yachting industry in this country. It ruined it. It's gone. It's almost entirely out of business. No more yachts are made in this country. Is that what you're considering when you look at luxury taxes and implementing them on luxury items that employ non-luxury purchasing employees?
The question is, how much was that tax? Was it 2, 3, 4%, or was it 10 or 20%? I don't
Wiped
know.
out the industry.
I don't know the details of your question.
Thank you for the question and the answer. I think we had somebody else that had a question. Sir, step forward.
I'm Tony Shelton, and I know that Shelly's been trying to get to answer this question. How do you feel about the blue card situation and concealed carry permits in Nevada?
I'm glad you asked. It took 5 minutes at the Boulder Police Command Station for me to get a blue card. As far as concealed weapon carry, I want to get one because I have been threatened. I sleep with a .22 under my pillow, and I've got a shotgun next to my desk. I am extremely disliked by the collection companies in the state and by many people in the HOA industry. I have upset their apple cart. I continue to upset it, and when I get up to Carson City, I'll do even more for the people, not for those that are enriching themselves at the price of costing homeowners their homes.
He actually directed that for Mrs. Shelton.
Mrs. Shelton, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I'm against the blue card and I'm against concealed weapons permit. I think it's against our Second Amendment rights. We were given the right to bear arms in the Constitution. It says nothing in there about registering it or putting your name on a list that says who has a gun and who doesn't have a gun. And I think our forefathers were against that operation. Now, I also would like to leave it open, though, for those people, because you'll hear people from the police department say, well, we need a list so that we can solve crimes. Well, if you're an individual that wants to take your gun down there or your laptop down there and register it with the police department so that if it's stolen, that they can find it for you, you go right ahead. I don't want them knowing what property I have, so I'm not going to register my gun, my laptop, my iPhone, and I think that it needs to be eliminated. I heard one sheriff give an excuse of how much money it takes. Well, then take all that money and use it to buy your little cameras or whatever the next thing that they want to get is.
Thank you. We have just a couple of minutes left. Does anyone else on the panel have any questions? And I'd like to thank our candidates for participating in the political process.